Derrick Henry runs wild. Tyler Huntley steps up, and the Ravens save their season in Week 17 versus the Green Bay Packers. We break it all down on an instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome in to the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here on this Saturday late night edition, late night instant reaction of Locked On Ravens, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And jam-packed episode as the Ravens save their season in Week 17 against the Green Bay Packers. We'll talk about Derrick Henry running wild. We'll talk about Tyler Huntley stepping up, as well as obviously what comes next for this Ravens team. Hint, hint, it includes Shedeur Sanders in that Cleveland Browns team. So we'll be breaking it all down here today on the show. Thanks again for being here and celebrating. We'll have a Victory Sunday tomorrow as well, which will be fun. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. Well, Derrick Henry certainly had a fun day. Green Bay Packers defense did not, as the Ravens just obliterate the Packers on the ground. And look, Tyler Huntley steps up in a huge way. And I thought Tyler looked great, but the big storyline, obviously, to start is Derrick Henry, who went absolutely wild. And this was the game plan, right? And I talked about it on the pregame episode this morning and all throughout the week. If anything, it was just going to be a John Harbaugh make a statement game, right? Like make a statement game. And Harbaugh called it a heart-defining win. So, he's very pleased and happy, I'm sure. But we saw a lot of adjustments that, yes, you know what? It is pretty maddening that the Ravens waited 17 weeks to do some of this stuff. But I guess better late than never, although it could be too little too late if the Steelers win tomorrow. Henry, just for the pure box score stats, because, I still can't get over looking at him without becoming impressed. 36 carries for 216 yards and 4 touchdowns on the day for Derrick Henry. One of his best all-time career games, which says something considering Derrick Henry has had a Hall of Fame career, and he will be in the Hall of Fame. Average 6 yards per carry. Some of the stuff, though, I liked what Baltimore did. And if you were watching on the watch along with me, and for those that don't know, we do watch alongs every single Ravens game, so be sure to check those out. I said this, and if you're in the watch along, you know it. I think that this game was won on that 3rd and 5 play. Let me actually find out when exactly that play was. It was in the 4th quarter. The Packers had just scored. They had just scored. And you had a 3rd and 5. You were up by 3 at this point, and there was 1minute and 10 seconds to go in the 3rd. All right, so it was late 3rd quarter. Derrick Henry on a 3rd and 5 from the Ravens 20 after 2 very underwhelming pass plays. They ran the ball with Derrick for 9 yards on 3rd and 5. When everyone thought it was going to be a pass, the Ravens went to the line, they adjusted the play, Huntley was doing his thing, and they ran the ball with Derrick Henry. They substituted Derrick Henry on plays where, hey, Derrick Henry makes sense, right? Like they did that. It was a breath of fresh air, but something that, again, should have been happening much, much earlier than Week 17. But people are excited, and rightfully so. I mean, right now the Ravens have saved their season, and in a game where Lamar Jackson does not play, Tyler Huntley steps up in the moment. And this offense putting up 41 points without Lamar, riding Derrick Henry the way that they did, and Green Bay coming into this game. And again, no Micah Parsons, and some of the injuries Green Bay suffered throughout this season has made it very difficult for them to kind of put a ragtag group of people together here. But this was the 5th best rushing defense in the NFL coming into this week. So still very, very impressive. And I also want to give a shout out to the offensive line. We saw an offensive line highlight package in this game for the Ravens that featured Daniel Falele, by the way. Those guys were moving bodies. 2nd straight week of incredible football from those guys. I thought that this was, I said they won up to themselves. I thought last week was their best game of the season. I thought this week they outdid themselves again. So you got guys moving bodies, and it again makes it easier when Micah Parsons isn't in there disrupting you, and you have to account for him on all different possessions. But Ravens did what they were supposed to, running the ball with Derrick Henry and making sure that he was a factor throughout the entire game. There were still some moments I was kind of like, I don't know, I don't like this, but Henry left it all out on the field. You could tell he was tired. He was giving it his all. He was willing himself to go back out on that field every single play. I can't say enough good things about Derrick Henry and the effort that he put out here tonight. And actually, there's so much that's been said about Derrick over the course of this season about how, is he washed? Is this happening? Well, a lot of this is about some of the offensive line blocking and how that's been. It all goes hand in hand. It all starts up front. And we see now what Derrick Henry can do with good offensive line play, albeit against teams without their star defenders, Patriots and Milton Williams and Packers and Micah Parsons. But assuming the Steelers do lose, and again, that's, we're just putting it out there for comparison's sake, the Ravens, they're going to go up against the Pittsburgh defense that isn't the Pittsburgh defense of old. But we'll get to that a little bit later in the show. I want to give a shout out to Tyler Huntley as well, because, Tyler, for the second straight week, and, I guess half of that New England game when he came in, and then this full game against Green Bay, has stepped up and delivered. And then obviously we can't forget about the Chicago game earlier in the season, 16-20 for Tyler Huntley, 107 yards through the air and 1 touchdown. Also had 8 carries for 60 yards on the ground. He just did everything he was supposed to do. He only had really one throw that I felt like was a mistake, and that was that play that Zay Flowers got injured on, but Zay was okay. But he did a good job of protecting the football, being very cautious, and, making the right play and the right throws. If he had to escape for a scramble, he'd do it. If he had to check the ball down, he'd do it. There was that one to Rasheen Ali late in the game where the Ravens ended up punting on that possession on that third down, where I'm like, okay, why are we throwing check downs on like 3rd and 12 or whatever it was? But I thought he had a lot of time to operate. And again, there were a lot of short, quick passes, which was the recipe and should have been the recipe. But I cannot get over. The Ravens held the ball again for 40 minutes and 16 seconds. Green Bay, 19-44. And I mean, in that first quarter, the Ravens held the ball for literally the entire first quarter, 14 minutes essentially, compared to Green Bay in their 1 minute and 11 seconds. So I can't say enough good things about this team over the last 2 weeks. Well, I guess last 2 weeks, if you take out the final 2 drives of the game against New England offensively. Like offensively, they've been a unit, there have been some different situations where, you kind of wonder, is this going to work on this drive? What's this play call on this drive? But overall, I think it has been very good. And again, very bad that it's taken this long to see some of these changes and things, because again, Derrick Henry having 36 carries in this game was about game flow. And, with John Harbaugh and his comments, again, I think he took control and took charge. And actually, you could kind of see that on the sideline at points where, Harbaugh was dictating things. Wow, like a head coach should do, where he's saying, hey, we're going to call a timeout here. We're going to think this over. Should we go for it? So still kind of getting the input of guys. But I thought the adjustments of, having Keaton in on a specific drive and then the Ravens get into, 3rd and shorts or 1st and goal from the 4, and Derrick comes trotting out on the field. In-game adjustments. Look at what happens when you feed the ball to Derrick Henry. Look at what happens when you make the adjustments and don't just go strictly off a rotation when you feed the hot hand. So at least they did it in this game. At least they've shown they are capable of doing it. But the fact that it took 17 weeks to do it is, it's disappointing for sure. But season is saved, because again, if the Ravens had lost this one, they would have been done, would have been eliminated from the postseason. Now the Ravens can put their trust in the Cleveland Browns and Shedeur Sanders, which I'm sure everybody is very excited to do. But, at the end of the day, with what the Ravens have put themselves in, they put themselves in this hole. They're going to hope that Cleveland can give them one opportunity to maybe right their wrongs in week 18 against Pittsburgh for that division. But if that is the case, if that does happen, I want to see more of this. Even if it's Lamar, I want to see more of this. Run the ball with Derrick Henry. And because, again, we don't know how healthy Lamar would be if he plays in that week 18 game, assuming the Steelers lose and it means something. If the Steelers win, I don't think Lamar plays and it's just going to be a wash and whatever. But Tyler's done an incredible job, and I do want to say that I do not think the Ravens are going to bring back Tyler Huntley next season, not because of the fact that he doesn't deserve it. He absolutely does. I would love to have Tyler back as the backup, but I think that someone is going to pay Tyler more money than the Ravens are willing to compete for a starting job. And I think he deserves it. I mean, he's played really great. He's grown a lot as a player too. I mentioned that on the watch along. He's grown a lot, which, obviously, like, he's not just some young kid anymore. He's been in the league for a while. He's been in different organizations and obviously with this Ravens team for a while. But I think that Tyler Huntley is going to earn some money this offseason because of the fact that he has come in with Lamar Jackson on the sideline and filled in admirably for Lamar. And, I think with what Huntley brings to the table and some of the fresh legs that he has, I mean, Lamar's been banged up all season, right? So they haven't done a lot of design runs, or Lamar hasn't scrambled as much as usual. But Huntley, with him having those fresh legs, that is an element of that game that the Ravens could use in this one. And again, if Lamar's healthy enough to play, put Lamar out there. Like, he's the guy that I want out there. But Huntley has done a great job of stepping up in those moments when, again, the season would have been over for the Ravens if they had lost that Chicago game. And we now know that based off of the records of these two teams, Pittsburgh and Baltimore, what would have happened. And same thing tonight against the Packers. But he did his job. Not a lot of receiver stats. Zay Flowers had 4 catches on 5 targets for 30 yards and a score. Andrews had a couple of big catches. Likely had a couple of big catches. But again, not really a huge game. Bateman, 1 catch for 7 yards. I mean, again, just the game flow and game script was not that of we're going to air this ball out. And it shouldn't have been. This was the exact game plan. Keaton had 9 carries for 31 yards. He had a nice 14-yarder, and then I think struggled the majority of the night after that. But, the big time throws from Huntley, the timely carries, even some of the timely play calls, right? Like, that's a big thing for this team. And I'm really, really glad that we saw it, because I was worried. I was going to say, are the Ravens going to get too cute again? Or are they going to all of a sudden, try to outsmart themselves? But they kept, what's the saying? Keep it simple, stupid. Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's what the Ravens did. They kept it simple, and they did not act stupid in this game. They did not act stupid. They won this game the way they were supposed to. But on the defensive side of the ball, there were some struggles, definitely, but they took advantage of some timely Green Bay mistakes, and they were able to come out with a win. So we'll talk about the defense coming up in the second part of the show. Still a lot to come here on the celebration. Well, holiday celebration, instant reaction edition. Ravens beat the Packers. Stay tuned. We got a lot coming your way here on the show. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment with live spreads, money lines that adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up, and you can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked in every snap, every drive, every possibility. And for the Ravens and Packers game, well, if you had Derrick Henry anytime touchdown, that was settled pretty quickly. You got Zay Flowers with the touchdown as well. So shout out to Zay if he had that on FanDuel also. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. And the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season's in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game, the crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Gametime app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app is incredibly intuitive. You got browsing, comparing, and buying tickets, and it just took minutes, and it takes minutes over on Gametime. One of my favorite features is being able to see the view from my seat before buying, so there are no surprises. In the zone deals, they stood out to me. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save even more. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Gametime. Down the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off a first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NFL or LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today and get back to being there live. Continuing on, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher is still here with you on this instant reaction edition of the show. Ravens beat the Packers in Week 17, get back to 500, and keep their season alive with a Steelers loss tomorrow to Cleveland needed to get them to a Week 18 battle that would be for the division. Appreciate everybody for being here. Again, hit the like and subscribe button in video form. Follow along and subscribe in audio form 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage here on Locked On Ravens, the regular show, Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. But we also have bonus episodes on the weekends, and we're going to have a bonus episode tomorrow, 6 a.m., talking about this win in a little bit more detail. We also have the Locked On Ravens squad show, which is going to come up after this, right after the instant reaction. Myself, Sam Njoku, former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail will be breaking it all down as well. We also got the watch alongs and a whole bunch of other Ravens content and coverage for you. All right, let's do a confidence check here. If you're with us in the comments live, or if you're with us after the fact and want to put it in the comments, how confident are you in this Ravens team that if the Steelers lose, the Ravens will be able to beat the Steelers in Week 18 and win the division? Based off what we saw tonight, scale of 1 to 10. 1 being that you're not confident at all, season's over, doesn't matter what happens. 10 being, oh yeah, Steelers lose, Ravens win the division. Let's do that. Scale of 1 to 10. I mean, look, with what we saw in this game, I'd probably say it's like 50-50. I'd probably give it a 5, maybe a 6. Maybe that's a little more confident. But, I see. All right, Clutch is asking Lamar or Huntley. You can do both. Let's do both. You can do grade or number, common number, Lamar, and then Huntley. If it's with Lamar, I give it a 6. If it's with Huntley, I give it a 5.5. How about that? Huntley 5.5, Lamar 6. That's what I would do. So, I mean, look, there's still a shot here for Baltimore. And I think if they are going to beat the Steelers, it's going to have to be because the defense steps up. It's going to be defensively. Now, if the Steelers lose, DK Metcalf not going to play in that game. And that's big because the Ravens defense in the secondary was pretty atrocious tonight. It was a pretty atrocious game from their secondary. Malik Willis carved this team up. And again, just weird turnovers from the Packers. They went for it on that 4th and inches with a weird run play. That was a bad call by LaFleur, in my opinion. You then have Malik Willis having the ball snapped off of his face. Then Malik Willis gets injured and Clayton Tune comes in, and there was a good ball to Bo Melton, who just drops the ball into Marlon Humphrey's arms. So a lot of weird turnovers, but Christian Watson, 5 catches for 113 yards. Romeo Doubs had a couple of really big catches, 3 for 62. The Ravens defense in the run game was great. Like, they held Emmanuel Wilson 3 for 16, and that was in garbage time. Josh Jacobs had 4 carries for 3 yards. Malik Willis was the main rusher for the Packers in this game, 9 for 60 and 2 touchdowns on the ground. But this defensive performance was not great. It wasn't great, if we're being honest here. Again, they got lucky with some of the turnovers, but they couldn't stop the Malik Willis option plays. And, Nate Wiggins had his worst game of his career, in my opinion. Marlon Humphrey got cooked on a lot of plays, just bad angles taken by guys. Now, they did hold up in the red zone a little bit, not as much as they have. They went 1 for 2. There weren't as many opportunities. Baltimore went 4 for 6, which was, I think, their best red zone game of this season, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe their second best if there's another game that I'm just forgetting about. But, defensively, they're going to have to be a lot better in Week 18, assuming the Steelers lose, because I was pretty disappointed, in the defensive effort in this one. Now, run game was great, but the Packers didn't really run the ball. I mean, again, between their running backs, just 7 carries. It looked like the Ravens AFC Championship game over there in 2023. All right, that might have been too soon. That's my bad. But I'm saying, only 7 carries for your running backs, and the game started off really weird with the Ravens driving down the field and the Packers scoring a touchdown in 2 plays, and the Ravens just holding the ball over and over and over and over again. But yeah, I see Intelligent talking 40-16 time of possession, just pure domination. And the fact that the Packers, and this to me, if we're being honest, this to me felt like pure Ravens football. Like, it felt like pure, something we haven't seen all season, where what is this team been predicated on? And I've talked about this on the main show on Locked On Ravens over the course of the week. The Ravens coming into this game were the best rushing offense in the NFL, 5.2 yards per carry. But they only had the 9th most attempts in the NFL with 427. Now, part of that is game flow and like reasonable stuff, not the stuff that John Harbaugh talks about sometimes. But 9th in attempts there, it feels like the Ravens haven't been leaning into that identity, where in 2024, they were 2nd in attempts and 1st in yards per attempt. In 2023, they were 1st in attempts and 3rd in yards per attempt. And that's just Todd Monken. And obviously in Greg Roman, they were running the heck out of that ball. 7th in attempts for Greg Roman in 2022. 3rd in yards per attempt. 2021, 3rd in attempts, 5th in yards per attempt. 2020, first in attempts, first in yards per attempt. 2019, first in attempts, first in yards per attempt. I mean, this is the least amount the Ravens have run the ball from an attempts standpoint where they've been ranked across the league. And it felt like they finally leaned into that identity tonight with the ability to say, hey, we're going to out-physical you. We're going to line up and tell you we're running this football, and you're going to do everything you can to stop it, and you're going to fail over and over and over and over again. That's been the Ravens' identity for years, and it feels like we haven't seen that all season until these last 2 weeks, and particularly tonight. This is what this Ravens team is. And again, it's been extremely disappointing. They have not leaned into something that's worked for them for years, where they've been getting too cute and doing all this crazy stuff that just strays so far beyond who they are as a football team. And it's not to say they can't do the stuff they're trying, but they go to that well too often when, yes, it doesn't help that their offensive line hasn't been good for 15 and a half weeks or 16 weeks, whatever you want to say. A lot of this is because the Ravens offensive line has finally stepped up their game over these last 2 weeks, which again, could be too little too late. But even still, they just haven't gone to that well as many times. And, whether it's because, Lamar's banged up with the option plays or the offensive line hasn't been playing good enough, still have to try on a lot of those, especially on the early downs on some of these games where they could have won, putting Derrick Henry in the game or not outsmarting themselves. Like there are so many different things that they could have done and they didn't do. And, obviously this was a great win. The offense looked great. But it kind of just takes me back to some of these other matchups where I just kind of like, well, what if they did this in, the Patriots game? Or what if they did that in, I don't know, the Steelers game or the Bengals? Like, one of these tough losses that they've had. What if that was the case? And now they're going to be fighting for their playoff lives on the couch against, they're going to be watching the Steelers, right? That's how they're going to do their fight. It's going to be on the couch where they're going to be watching the game. And hopefully then they can fight for their playoff lives on the field in week 18. But yeah, it's just stuff. And yeah, I see the comment from Joey. Lele did well today. Yeah, all the O linemen did. There were a couple of plays that I'm sure those guys would like to have back, but overall, I was very, very, very impressed. And yeah, I see Richard talking about the cheese grater hat. That was nasty. That was disrespectful. For those that didn't see it, Tyler Huntley, Derrick Henry, and Lamar Jackson, at least those are the three that were pictured, had the cheese grater hat on after carving up that Packers defense. And the Packers, just without Micah Parsons, didn't have the guys. They just flat out didn't have the guys to handle. And it's a big time win. A lot of people, I think Maria Taylor was actually the only person on the broadcast to pick the Ravens to win the game. I mean, it was massive. It was massive. And now you're again fighting for your playoff live on the couch where you're going to watch the game. Can Shedeur Sanders do his thing? We'll talk about that a little bit coming up in the final part of the show. We'll do like a little, even like on the show tomorrow, I'm going to do like a Steelers-Browns preview in the final part of the show just to preview that game because of how important it actually is. So, man, Shedeur Sanders, can he do his thing? The Ravens, they put themselves in this spot where they're going to have to rely on the Cleveland Browns team that is been pretty bad this year, but we've even seen it firsthand. They can do some things, and I think I saw the stat earlier in the chat from someone. Steelers are 1-5 since 2018 in Cleveland. Hey, there's a shot. So coming up in the final part of the show, we'll dive into a little more of this game, do a little more takeaways, and then we'll also talk about Shedeur Sanders' playoff scenarios and Cleveland, because that's where all eyes turn to. All eyes turn to Cleveland. So stay tuned. Plenty coming up on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once while we're all making choices every day. One of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2-player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, in Georgia. PrizePicks is adding an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats: fantasy score, field goals attempted, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your strategy. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, rounding out the instant reaction episode here. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you. Ravens beat the Packers in dominant fashion, particularly Derrick Henry just running all over this Green Bay team, running wild on them, and sets up a huge game for Pittsburgh tomorrow against the Browns. And if the Steelers lose that game, they will be playing the Ravens at Acrisure Stadium in Week 18. And I assume that game will be flexed to prime time if that does happen. Appreciate everybody for being here. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form. Be sure to stick around as well here, because after this, we're going to go right into the squad show of myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver CarGurus. We're going to break it down even more tonight on Locked On Ravens, and again in the morning, 6 a.m. with our bonus episode there. Also, be sure to follow me on social media, ChaosShark34, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. And if you have a friend or a family member who's a Ravens fan or wants daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them over here our way. We have such an amazing community here on Locked On Ravens. All right, let's do a couple more takeaways from the game against the Packers. I think that for me, one of the things the Ravens have been pretty atrocious at all season, and something they'll have to clean up in Week 18, assuming Pittsburgh loses, they've been a bad tackling team this year. I don't think it pops up on the stats in terms of like the actual numbers. I'll try quickly to look up NFL defensive stats 2025. Let's see if I can actually find the missed tackle here. All right, team advanced defense. So the Ravens, they're like middle of the pack, 88 missed tackles. So it's not like been egregious for them, but it seems like in super big moments, particularly on third downs in those third and longs, that's a huge key for me, and something I thought the Ravens did not do a good job of, because the Packers went 3 for 6 on third down. Baltimore dominated on third down, 10 of 14. They were unbelievable. But on those third downs, one was the 3rd and 18 where, who was it, Christian Watson, or maybe it was Jaden Reed got open. I can't remember who the receiver was, but another one, a 3rd and 9. Like, it's these third and longs where Baltimore's putting themselves in really good position and then giving up just some wild, wacky play, some deep shot play. That, to me, you can't continue to have that. And, while Baltimore's turned themselves into a very good third down defense this year, and they were top 10 in both coming into the game, in both third down and red zone defense, you still have to be able to hold up in those situations. And that's one of the stories defensively for me for Baltimore. Offensively, still want to see other guys step up besides Zay Flowers. I thought Andrews and Likely did an okay job of that in this one, but again, the game flow was not to throw the ball, so there weren't really a lot of opportunities in the first place for that. But this, again, it's just like it shows you who this Ravens team is, who they can be, and if this is the offensive line the Ravens get moving forward, even if it is, in a meaningless Week 18 game against Pittsburgh, and they managed to win that one, I don't know, like, that's huge. Like, that's what the Ravens have been missing all season, because we can talk about Derrick Henry, we can talk about Lamar Jackson, we can talk about Zay Flowers and, all of those position players. But as I've said over and over, and if you're an everydayer, first of all, thank you for being here almost every single day or every day here on Locked On Ravens. Also, shout out to the first-time listeners and every summer in the middle. Thank you, too. But if you've been listening to me on the show, I've said it all starts up front with that offensive line. You have to go up front with that offensive line over and over and over again. I've said it over and over and over again. In these last 2 weeks, we have finally seen that physical bully ball. Patrick Ricard getting to the second level. Tyler Linderbaum doing his thing. Even Falele getting out in front. We saw that again. I want to say this again. The Ravens offensive line got a highlight package. You know how crazy that is to say in the year 2025? It's insane almost to say that. So, man, I'll tell you, it's been awesome. And let's round out. If you have a couple of questions you want to ask, I'll try to get to a couple before we round out the show. Still have a couple of minutes here on the show. So if you have any questions, be sure to put them in the chat, and I'll try to get to as many as I can. And also, if you are an everydayer and you want to be a part of the Everydayer Club, we do Q&As every single week over there. Some extra content that I'm not able to do on the show anymore, just regularly. So links in the description for that if you want to support the show a little bit more. I see someone asking, Kevin, is Falele or Marshall Yanda? Look, I don't know if I go that far. I'm not going that. But hey, it's been better. It's been better. And again, the bar is kind of on the floor with that whole situation. But again, I've been pleased with the way the offensive line is played, because that's what we do here on Locked On Ravens, right? It's our job to criticize fairly and praise fairly. Where if a team or a player or a unit does well, we give them praise, and if they don't, we criticize them. That's a fairness of it. We're not doing all this unnecessary praise. We're not doing all this unnecessary criticism. It's just real, what we see, what I see. And yeah, it's been bad all year for the Ravens offensive line-wise. But the last 2 weeks, got to give him a lot of credit for how they've stepped up and played. Spirit Bomb asking, thoughts on Nate Wiggins? Worst game of his career. It was bad. And Nate has had a couple of, he's had moments, but I still think Nate's really good. I think he just needs to figure out a couple more things. Nate's been really good for the Ravens over the course of his very young career, but we can acknowledge that he got cooked tonight. It was a really bad game from him, and I'm sure he'll be the first one to tell you that. So I'm hoping that moving forward, the Ravens, are going to be able to work on this secondary, because you obviously have Kyle Hamilton and Nate locked into place. Malik is going to be there too, but Marlon Humphrey, that's a different conversation. We actually looked it up on the watch long. They can save about $7-ish million by releasing Marlon this offseason. It's a question they're going to have to ask themselves, because Marlon, while he's been in the right place at the right time for a lot of his turnovers this year, he also hasn't had, he's been great in certain spots, but it's been more bad than good for Marlon this year, unfortunately. Rob asking, what's the biggest need for the Ravens right now? I'd still say offensive line. I'm not going to let a couple bad games say that the Ravens don't need offensive line help. I think they still need to replace both their guards, and, they need to figure out what's happening with Linderbaum, and, Stanley doesn't have forever left, so you're going to have to figure that out. So I'd still say offensive line. They also do need a grade A pass rusher, though. I know Max Crosby's getting a lot of attention right now with that whole Raiders thing, but, with what we saw tonight, again, even though the Ravens were winning on some of these plays, it's lack of contain, it's guys making some mistakes. And Baltimore's defense on the day had 2 sacks. Travis Jones had 1.5, and Tavius had 0.5. But just getting a guy in there, you need to have a Micah Parsons, TJ Watt, Trey Hendrickson, Myles Garrett. You need to have that if you want to, in my opinion, be a serious defense. Let's see, what else do we got? What do you think about all the Lamar talk this week? It felt extremely mean-spirited. Yeah, I agree. I think it was a lot of it very targeted, and I've said this over and over again. I think Lamar's the only player in the NFL that's not allowed to have a bad day or a bad game, or not allowed to get sick, not allowed to play video games or whatever, whatever it may be. And I get it. Lamar hasn't had a good season in terms of his expectations and what we know Lamar Jackson can be. A lot of that has to do with the fact that, well, he's been injured for almost all of the year. The offensive line has played terribly, and some of his receivers haven't stepped up when he's needed. And Lamar hasn't been perfect either. Again, he's made poor throws. He's had some tough games. I am fully acknowledge that, but there's context behind it. And so when people are saying oh, look at Lamar, he's not trying, or he's given up and all this, and then, he's all injury prone. And then people are talking about Joe Burrow, oh, Joe, you can sit out this week. It's all the Bengals' fault. No, it's okay, Joe. That to me is just Joe's more injured than Lamar's been. And, that to me is ridiculous double standards at this point. Let's see. What else do we got? A couple more questions. Is likely still a possibility for Tag? Are we going to let him walk? I think they're going to let him walk. And at this point, I'm not even sure they want to bring him back. I feel like they're going to prioritize Charlie Kolar. And by the way, Charlie's going to get a heck of a contract this offseason, by the way. I think he's going to get that Josh Oliver contract, which was that was $6 or $8 million a year. I think Kolar could get anywhere from 8 to 10, if we're being honest, for a team that wants to throw him in a starting role. Baltimore, I want Likely back. I think that he still has so much potential, and he has yet to reach that. But I think the Ravens, my prediction is they bring back Charlie Kolar on a deal that some people will be why are you paying him that money? I think it'll be worth it. But I think they bring back Kolar and they move on from Isaiah Likely. Let's see. Should Tyler Huntley be a 2-time Pro Bowler now? Hey, man, let's start the agenda. Let's get it. Tyler Huntley and Lamar Jackson as the alternates in the Pro Bowl. You know what? He would be first-time All-Pro Hall of Famer against the NFC North, though. We'll say that. Hall of Famer against the NFC North. So, Ravens are here, and Shedeur Sanders is going to have to be the guy to save this season for the Ravens. It is all up to Myles Garrett. And look, we all love Myles Garrett. I wanted Myles Garrett to come to Baltimore forever. I want Myles Garrett to come to Baltimore. I want him, though, first to help out the Ravens here in Week 17, sack Aaron Rodgers and a DK Metcalf-less Steelers offense and make that thing work. So Steelers, Browns, for all the marbles for the AFC North, for the Ravens' sake of things. If the Steelers win, Ravens are done, and it's disappointing, and it's over. If the Steelers lose, well, then we got a show on our hands for week number 18. And Richard asking if I'm going to watch live. Probably not the Ravens-Steelers game live, but if honestly, after the game, I might go live. I think after the game, I'll go live and we'll talk about it. I don't think I'll watch the game live on the stream, but we will probably have an instant reaction to the game to say the Ravens are still alive and they're playing for the division, or they lose and their season is over. So, hey, big win for Baltimore. Tyler Huntley, Derrick Henry get the job done. The Ravens save their season at least for one more day. That's all I have to hear on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. But don't go anywhere because we're about to start up in about 5 or 10 minutes, maybe 15 max, the Locked On Ravens squad show. Myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver CarGurus now with another hour of Ravens coverage, post-game coverage here on the show. So be sure you hit the like and subscribe button again in audio form and video form, 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Follow me on social media. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.